This is part 3 of a 3-part video series. I'd recommend watching parts 1 and 2 first, linked in the description below, for the sake of context on why I'm making this series. On July 20th, 2017, Chester Bennington lost his battle with depression. Throughout this video, I will attempt to speak of my own mental illness because people who I admire, like Chester, have done so loudly and have helped me understand that I was not alone and guided me to understand my own demons a little bit better. However, I'm not a professional. My experiences with depression and PTSD are going to be different from someone else's. Different things help different people. In my experiences, I've had people recommend different things to me that helped them, but had no positive effect on me. This video is not going to pretend to be the cure for depression. However, what I will attempt to do is try to explain to the best of my ability what it is like living with it. I want to try to translate my experiences into words for anyone who feels like they're alone, or anyone who knows someone living with depression and wants another tool to attempt empathy. That's easier said than done though, because one of the challenges with pain, physical or psychic, is that we can only approach it through metaphor. It can't be represented the way a table or a body can. In some ways, pain is the opposite of language. You'll find that most of the examples I'm going to use throughout this video are going to be metaphorical. It is my hope that one of these examples will connect and empathize with someone who's struggling in a way that they can use it to analyze their own illness and be able to reach out to someone and attempt to explain their own experiences to them. Linkin Park was and is my favorite band of all time, and throughout my life I was made fun of for that. Some of the people that messaged me on social media the day Chester died in the past had put me down for using Linkin Park as a way to deal with my depression. All of that never hindered my love for the band because of everything they got me through in my life. But for a long time, it did frustrate me to no end. It made me feel like feeling anything, let alone dealing with my depression, would only ever be treated like a joke. There's this fucked up notion that whenever men show emotion, it's a sign of weakness. As someone who does believe in equality, it's been hard for me to see time and time again men who express themselves with their art in a way to discuss their experiences with depression and suicidal ideation to be viewed as weak or pathetic, because they couldn't possibly have real problems in their life, right? We have to constantly put up this facade of strength and masculinity due to some bizarre traditionalism. Otherwise, if we let it down for even a moment, we're seen as whiny or are told to man up. When Chester died by suicide, everyone wanted to shove their perspective in people's faces. And that's fine, I guess. You're allowed. However, when I saw people attempt to rationalize, theorize, or demonize his death based on assumption rather than fact, I needed to step away. These people had no idea what it's like to live every single day waking up, battling this disease. Unless you live with depression or have seen someone go through it day in and day out, it's really difficult to truly understand. Picture the worst physical pain that you have ever been in your life and the way that affects you and your thinking at the time. You're not thinking straight. It's excruciating. Mental anguish, psychological pain is exactly like that and just as disabling and painful. In my experiences with talking to people about depression, there's often this confusion about the difference between sadness, feeling depressed, and depression. I often hear people say, "Oh, I had depression once," and you don't anymore. The terminology is a bit confusing sometimes. Sadness is a response to a specific event in your life, and will eventually fade over time. Depression is a medical condition that invokes self-hateful and self-criticizing thoughts. A depressive episode could start with little to no warning at all. You can get better in the sense that you learn to live with the illness and can find different tools and coping mechanisms to help you through it. But, to be blunt, there isn't a cure. My sadness will stop. My depression will not. This TED Talk explains it perfectly. To Linda Bennington, Chester's wife, explained it beautifully as,
there is a big difference between mental health and mental illness.
Yeah.
We all have mental health. Everybody. We all have physical health. We all have mental health. However, we don't all have mental illness, just as we all don't have a physical illness. And I believe if we can get one person to understand that because they're having a bad day, or they may feel in the dumps, it's not shameful. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It doesn't mean anything. You could be having a bad day, and that's it, because you have mental health.
Another band I love, Nothing More, shared this quote on their Facebook a while back that has always resonated with me when thinking about how others cope with mental health. An old Cherokee chief was teaching his grandson about life. "A fight is going on inside me," he said to the boy. "It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, self-doubt, and ego. The other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside you, and inside every other person too." The grandson thought about it for a minute, and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old chief simply replied, "The one you feed." I definitely think there's something to that, but in the middle of a bout with depression, it feels like we're lacking this self-control of which wolf we feed. Depression, similarly, is a disease that manifests into this alternate self that we're constantly trying to fight off. And its end game is to conquer our body so that nothing of us, its host, is left. It's really difficult to picture what having a bad depressive episode feels like if you've never been through one before. You don't deserve happiness. You don't deserve anything. Everything good in your life was given to you out of pity. Why do you even bother? You can't keep any friends. They all leave at some point. They always realize that they're better off without you. It's only a matter of time. I don't deserve happiness. I don't deserve anything. The people I love deserve better than what I can offer. I'm nothing. It's only a matter of time. No, just leave me alone. Just leave me alone. I deserve to be alone. The smile I show to others is often a defense mechanism, a facade. I'd like to think I'm an honest person, but what if I'm not being honest with myself? Depression is like driving around in a car that's making this horrible noise, like it's going to break down at any minute, but none of the passengers can hear it. All you can do is hold on tight to the steering wheel and hope we make it to the next stop. Martin, or Little Karibo, known for his anime parody series Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged, and acting as Frieza in Dragon Ball Z Abridged, both of which I highly recommend, started doing a vlog series documenting his own experiences with depression called We're Still Here. Now, I started off as a fan of his parody work in 2006 after I found it on some anime fan site, and his videos continued to brighten my day when I was dealing with depression. But when he started We're Still Here, well, here's the thing. On weeks where I was having a really rough time dealing with my mental illness, that week he'd also release a video where he was having a really bad day. And when I felt like I was making progress with my mental health, oftentimes, coincidentally, he'd also be making progress. It felt like his experiences were mirroring my own, making me feel like I wasn't alone. His vlogs have made a lot of my internal battles somehow make sense to me, and made me feel a lot less guilty for having them.
You may feel that you could have done something differently. You may look back on a situation and feel, well, I was just being me. I was letting my depression get the better of me, and I was not in control. But even so, I should have been able to take control. You may look back on a conversation with somebody and realize that you could have said things differently. I know there's been many times when I've been talking to somebody, in my mind I drift off because I'm like saying to myself, you don't deserve to know this person. You're worthless. You don't even contribute to the conversation, let alone to their life. And I'll focus on that. And as a result, I'll be ignoring them for a time, and that's on me. And then I feel super guilty for that. And if they ask me a question based on what they're asking, I'm like, oh God, how do I disguise the fact that I've been sat here basically being miserable instead of, being a good friend? And I hate myself for that. But it's not your fault if that happens. It's a voice in the back of your head. It's not like a second personality or anything, but it's something that's loud enough to be distracting, and it's loud enough to drown out the positive influences in your life, such as friends, or such as, work, or even fun. And it's not your fault that that's happening to you. It's really not. It's not your fault that this might be destroying relationships. It might be destroying your ability to focus. But it isn't because of you. It's because this thing has infected you. It's because you're human. And, that comes with its drawbacks. Depression affects literally every human at some point. We let our defenses down, and unfortunately it sneaks its way in. But it's not your fault that happened. And it's not your fault that you're going to suffer the repercussions of that. You're completely innocent in that situation. You're a victim. And this what's happening to you is essentially, somebody is brutally bringing you down. And that person is unfortunately you. And it's not easy to look at yourself and go, please stop. So it's not your fault. You don't have control. It's really not. It's really not you. Remember that. Remember that in your worst time, when depression is really eating its way at you, that's something else altogether. That's like a parasite. And you don't blame yourself for getting a cold. That's the best way I can describe it. You don't blame yourself for that. Any sickness, and this is what it is. It's a sickness.
I mentioned earlier how it's difficult to understand depression unless you live with it, or you've been around someone who lives with it. Unfortunately, it can also be the case that people who live with someone with a mental illness will see that person as selfish and not be able to understand the torturous struggle that they're attempting to endure. When they see that person going through a depressive episode, they shut them out. That's a normal and human response. Mental illness can be difficult to empathize with. Your loved ones will hurt you. They will tell you things that you tell yourself every day. That you're selfish, that you're making other people feel bad, that you could be doing more. I don't blame people for leaving anymore. I understand it. There are days where I don't want to be around me, where I want these thoughts I have to just stop. When I was growing up, I didn't know that when I was lashing out, I was having a depressive episode. I hung out with the emo clique in high school, but even they were like, "Damn, the shit this guy posts on MySpace is depressing." I didn't get the help I needed because I didn't think I needed it or deserved it. I always thought that these thoughts that infected my brain on a daily basis were normal, that every teenager went through them, and while a lot do, angst isn't the same thing as what I experienced. What I'm still somehow experiencing and dreading every damn day. People need to be talking about their mental health. Sometimes I won't mean what I'm saying, but a lot of the time, I'll feel what I'm saying. Martin also wrote on Twitter the day Chester passed. John Green's new book, Turtles All the Way Down. While it was one of the most difficult books for me to read emotionally, it really encapsulates what it's like to live with a mental illness. Speaking of John,
I have a theory about this, Hank. I don't think we humans like to imagine our lives as random. We need human lives to be narratives that make sense. So if we can't find causation, we just create it. Like people get depression because they're weak, or they get diabetes because they don't eat well, or they have heart failure because they don't exercise. All that stuff is either totally inaccurate or overly simplistic, but we want every effect to have a cause, and when we can't find that cause, we invent one.
something I'm growing tired of constantly seeing and reading about more and more are stories of people having their mental illnesses be demonized by different political or religious factors, and those people being guilted by their loved ones to the point where they feel bad for something that is out of their control, ultimately increasing the chance of the illness winning in the end. We need to stop telling people how to feel and listen to them instead. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, Jewish, atheist, Christian, Catholic, whatever gets you through these dark days. Depression is not a choice, but stigma and ignorance are. I've always appreciated this video from Anna Akana.
I think that the best way to talk to someone with depression is actually not talking at all, but listening with compassion and not trying to provide solutions. I mean, unless that solution is encouraging someone to go to therapy, which is great because therapy is awesome, everyone should do it, but not necessarily trying to fix somebody's illness. And I know that our instinct when someone is sad is to try to cheer them up or try to help them, but depression isn't personal and it's not going to go away with a pep talk. You can say supportive things like, "I'm here for you. Is there anything that I can do right now?" Look, you may not believe it right now, but the way that you're feeling is totally gonna change. But maybe stay away from, "Look on the bright side." We all go through times like this. Like, depression is just all in your head. You can totally overcome it. It's just mind over matter. And I think it's also really important to note that you should try to protect yourself too when dealing with a depressed person. If you're naturally an empath or susceptible to other people's emotions, it can be really difficult to separate yourself from it. I mean, I've definitely been guilty of trying to be there for a depressed person and letting their illness affect my mental state, which isn't good for either of us. So setting your own boundaries to protect your emotions is so important. And if you're talking to a depressed person or are depressed yourself, I think a good rule of thumb for that and for life in general is just that everybody wants to be heard. So listening with compassion can make a huge difference in somebody's life. And I know it sounds like so simple and obvious, but you would be surprised at how rarely it actually happens.
A recurring problem I've noticed as well is that friends or family inadvertently punish the behavior they want to see out of their loved one who's attempting to make progress with their mental illness. Do not punish the behavior you want to see. I mean, it seems pretty obvious when you put it like that, right? But how many families, when an introvert sibling or child makes an effort to socialize, snarkily say, "So you've decided to join us?" Or when someone does something they've had trouble doing, say, "Why can't you do that all the time?" Happened to me too often. Or any sentence containing the word "finally." If someone makes a step, a small step, in a direction you want to encourage it. Don't complain about how it's not enough. Don't bring up previous stuff. Encourage it. Because I swear to fucking God, there is nothing more soul-killing, more motivation-crushing than struggling to succeed and finding out that success and failure are both punished. With depression, you're not thinking straight. You're not yourself. Whatever part of you is left in this vessel that is your body wants this you that's not you, this alternate version of yourself, to be gone. Again, we cannot see the mental battles other people are going through.
Secondly, I want to remind all of us that what we see in videos or on Instagram isn't the whole story. Like, my friends and family have known that I have been unwell the last several weeks because it is impossible for me to hide it from them, but it is very possible for me to hide it with jump cuts.
Depression is like a recording that plays and repeats forever in your mind, telling you all of these things that are terrible about yourself, trying to subliminally make you believe them, playing side by side your ongoing thoughts. Sometimes you're able to raise the volume of your thoughts through various methods, which decreases the volume of the depression. But it never stops. And while the recording will try to reach the highest decibel, it will never be able to tape over who you are. The recording is not you. Or, as Martin put it, depression has slowly nibbled away the pages of the book of me until all that's left is the cover. But the good news is, I can write more. When asked for advice for dealing with depression, Dan Harmon, creator of Community and co-creator of Rick and Morty, said, "For one, admit and accept that it's happening. Awareness is everything. We put ourselves under so much pressure to feel good. It's okay to feel bad. It might be something you're good at. Communicate it. Do not keep it a secret. Own it, like a hat or jacket. Your feelings are real." 2. Try to remind yourself over and over that feelings are real, but they aren't reality. Example, you can feel like life means nothing. True feeling. Important feeling. True that you feel it, but whether life has meaning, not up to us. Facts and feelings, equal, but different. The most important thing I can say to you is please don't deal with it alone. There is an incredible, miraculous magic to pushing your feelings out. Even writing "I want to die" on a piece of paper and burning it will feel better than thinking about it alone. Output is magical. Dark thoughts will echo off the walls of your skull. They will distort and magnify. When you open your mouth or an anonymous journal or blog or sketchpad, these thoughts go out. They'll be back, but you gotta get them out. Vent them, tap them. I know you don't want to, but try it. I've always enjoyed this Dimitri Martin image of the perceptions we have of our own successes and the successes of others. Just something to keep in mind when you're feeling like you're not good enough. I will never stop talking about my experiences with depression. No matter the ignorance, no matter the lack of empathy. Something I want people to keep in mind when discussing mental illness is don't compare pain. Personally, I believe that you cannot quantify suffering. What every person is going through, your experience, it matters. Everyone deserves to be heard.
And then when my husband passed, I felt this enormous responsibility to make his death mean something. He can't just be another rock star gone wrong, another rock star tragedy. And for my kids, especially when they look back, and when they tell their children about their about their dad, his life will speak for itself. I mean, his life will carry on. What his music, his philanthropy, his kids, because he has like 1 million of them. But I want them to as a mom, I want them to look back and know, my dad's death meant something too, and it changed something for the better. And I believe that Chester was a victim of his time, with where we're at with mental health. Mm-hmm. And I think as many people are. And so if I can be a small part of that catalyst of change, I'm going to do it.
I want to make something clear. Depression deniers and conspiracy theorists are not going to be tolerated. They will be deleted, and if the comment section becomes out of hand, it will be removed. In the past year, I've seen the worst of the worst. Anything from murder theories to hoaxes that have already been proven false elsewhere. Spreading these lies are disrespectful to Chester and his memory. Not only that, but they're disrespectful to his wife, his kids, Mike, and the rest of the band who have told us what happened, and are continuing to spread awareness of the demons that Chester had to battle every single day. Demons that he would consistently discuss within interviews and his art.
I found that for me, most of my suffering is self-inflicted. It's not like it's coming from some external source that's making me feel that way. I can easily find myself tricking myself into thinking that okay, you said I was 40 something and that made me mad. No, honestly, like, no, it's like like, that's not anything. It's you just, it's not, no one can make you feel anything. It's what you think about internally that makes you feel things. Like, you are the only person that makes you feel anything. And so, I learned through this whole journey, and it resonated with me. It was like, you can elevate your consciousness, you can elevate your spirituality by just acknowledging that there's a problem. And then once you do that, you've created space between you and that problem. And now you've actually got a little, even if it's just for a moment, like you have a second to kind of reflect and breathe on it. And that's kind of what I've just been doing. Like, okay, like, I know that I have this pattern of getting into these kinds of thoughts and these kinds of, actions and choices. And I'm going to do what I need to do so that I can just live in the moment and not get stuck in these ruts where I'm kind of in this circular way of thinking, these patterns. And that's kind of what Heavy's about. It's like just figuring that out, recognizing it, and then realizing, like, I actually can do something about it and, like, let go of this and move forward,
I have two questions on that. Like, you talked about depressed. This is like a huge topic coming. Is it like after you had your injuries, and you said, like, you talked to a therapist, did you go there and she diagnosed, like, you have a depression, or what did she say? Like, like your official depression, or is it out of your view?
Well, there's different levels of depression. I mean, for people, if you want to get, like, technical and clinical about it, there's different levels. Like, you can feel depressing feelings, and it's like a moment. It's like you can be in a moment. But, like, clinical depression is something that you actually can't get out of, and you need to you need to see a doctor. You have to get medicated for it. You need to go to therapy. There's, like, things that you need to do in order to get out of it, or else you won't, and you're just in it. And it's like it literally, it's not like, oh man, like, I kind of like that, I'm just bummed. It's like, I don't want to do anything, and I don't feel like doing anything, and I don't like anything. Like, there's no sunshine.
So
and so
like
it's not like a burned out. It's like a giving. It's like walking over into the corner and going, I'm just gonna lay down here and just die. Okay. It's not like, it's not even like I'm gonna kill myself. It's just like, I'm just gonna go over here and I'm not gonna eat anything. I'm not gonna drink anything. I'm just gonna lay here. I'm not gonna talk to anybody. I'm just gonna do that until I die. That's what depression's like. And for me, I've always kind of dealt with that my whole life. I've always had these kind of depressive side, and I think that's something I've never liked. But I've also never liked being anything. I don't like being I want to be happy, but when I'm in it, I try to get out of it. I don't like being sad. When I'm in it, I want to get out of it. I've never been comfortable just being.
I believe the way that we look at mental illness and mental health can change. In some ways, I'm grateful for the endless battles that I've been through within my mind. Because if my experiences or this video series can help push us in the right direction, or even just get one person to speak up about their demons, then it's worth it. Visit changedirection.org to learn about the 5 signs of emotional health. And if you're having suicidal thoughts, please go to chester.lincolnpark.com.